Good afternoon, Jonathan, and it's great that you've been able to spare some time to have a bit of a chat about FAM and strategy and stuff like that. I think many members will know you, but for those who don't, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, tell us about your job and your background.
Yeah, I'm probably just really quickly on my background. I guess I was sort of trying to work out how long ago this was, but actually it was 25 years ago now. I started working for Hampshire County Council Scientific Service. And my first job there was actually testing toys, which was awesome. And I very often regret ever moving away from the toy test department. But unfortunately, I got involved with asbestos, so worked there for a number of years before moving to the University of Portsmouth, where I was a senior lecturer delivering asbestos and also involved with the MSc in occupational hygiene, health and safety and environment before setting up where I am now, which is Gully Howard Technical. During my time at Hampshire County Council, I was lucky enough to do an MSc in environmental management and then later on an MBA at Gully Howard. So it's kind of a really strong feeling for me how good it is to try and do training while you're working. That's what worked for me. And I think my company's really hopefully very good at promoting training while you're working. So I think that's an important thing. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah, and certainly, one of our really valued BOHS training partners. So, and you've been involved in FAM, and it's a relatively new organisation, but it's really evolved and grown up quickly. And so, what do you see as the sort of key achievements of FAM today? What's it been able to do?
I guess actually getting started in the first place is quite a achievement. I remember back to when we, before it was launched, and there's a tremendous amount of work goes into to getting it going. So I suppose actually, recognizing the need for this, professional home for asbestos people. And I guess sort of it is still early days, but in terms of key achievements, I think it's great that we've already got 328 members. I think it is, but I personally want that to be 3,000 if or more. But it is still early days, but it is great to have that level of membership so early on. I think another standout sort of key success of FAM has been the FAM conference that is been running, and we've a lot of people being aware we've still managed to run that even through lockdown. I think that was challenged. So hats off to everyone, particularly the committee involved in doing that. And I think the conference set out to be a bit different to normal conferences in that I think there's a lot of people have been to asbestos conferences where very often it's going over old ground, whereas this we wanted to be sort of I was hoping that everyone would learn something from going. I certainly did. There was bits of asbestos didn't know about and gain some knowledge there. So I think they're two really key things. And also as well, I think again, membership probably doesn't realise, but FAM represents the membership at various national committees as well. So we're representing members at the UCAS's Technical Advisory Committee, the Asbestos Leadership Council, which is now called the Asbestos Network, and various subcommittees on there. So there's a lot goes on with that. I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit later on, but I suspect the membership currently doesn't realise about all of that. And I think something that we've got to work on is how we communicate that to the membership. And then also, how do the members feel involved as well? Because we need to make sure that we're representing their views, because that's something I want to get across. As FAM is not about the FAM committee; it's about the membership, and how are we making sure that we represent the membership?
And FAM is a sort of faculty of activity, but while it's hosted by BOHS, it's not really it's not really just a BOHS arm, is it? It aspires to be a bit more.
FAM is FAM, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a message that we probably need to to get across as well. because I think what we wanted FAM to be, as well as this forum, there's many aspects to it, but I think, it's almost like a safe haven to ask stupid questions. And I think within the asbestos profession, we're a little bit guilty. There's too many people who, number one, think they know everything, which they sometimes don't, but also then I think bits of information and knowledge and expertise get siloed because not people don't like talking to each other, because I don't know whether it's not wanting to reveal that they might not know something, or if they have particular skills or information, they kind of quite like keeping it to themselves, and we want to somehow kind of break through those barriers.
Yeah, I mean, it really is about sort of sharing knowledge, isn't it, rather than sort of anything. It's a quite different model from, if you like, the business organisations, which are really useful in putting forward, the different dynamics of within the industry. That's focus is really about knowledge and development, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, sort of, I understand this. The new version, the analyst's guide, is coming out, so there's going to be plenty of work for FAM to do on that.
It's been coming out since before FAM was formed, I think, but let's not go there with that one. So, but we are fairly sure it is imminent. So yeah, there's going to be discussions around that. I'm sure.
Much awaited, and I mean, the asbestos sector sort of sometimes gets a bit of a knocking, but it really is critical to sort of health. And I mean, looking at the numbers from HSE, still looking at thousands of people dying a year, and it's very diverse, and there are lots of specialist bodies. So I mean, thinking about how FAM interacts with that diversity, promotes professional development without kind of trying to sort of over select the pudding. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, it's a great point. I think there's two bits there I think are important to me, and one is I'm not sure that we recognise enough the importance of the professional in the asbestos industry as well. You're talking about that's literally right. HSE figures 5,000 people a year dying from asbestos-related diseases, and you have analysts and surveyors and bulk analysts, and they're all working there doing incredibly important, responsible jobs. And I don't think they feel that importance, and that actually really bothers me. An analyst going in to do an air test is saying, oh, they're on, and it's a carcinogen. There's 5,000 people a year dying from it. This is saying it's. I reluctantly say safe because that's not the really right words we should say, but it's okay to go back into an area following an air test, and that's a huge responsibility. And I don't think that they're given enough credit or acknowledgement, and they would argue pay, I'm sure, as well for that responsibility. But to sort of answer the second part of your question, is I think it's collaboration is key, and I guess there isn't enough collaboration between stakeholders at the moment, and I think that's something we definitely need to work on.
Yeah, and it's very hard because it has been left very much to the commercial sector to sort of work things out. There's sort of a virtue to that, but also, as you say, the kind of if you had been looking at some other types of exposure, for example, in the sort of biological area, etc., you would have had a lot more focus on this and a lot more research being driven through the public purse. So it is really interesting. BOHS obviously is the sort of host body, and BOHS itself has been through all sorts of different incarnations in the past and different organisations. But there's been a long-standing legacy of, I suppose, volunteers and scientific and technical experts who really want to get it right in terms of the technical guidance, etc. So there's this great legacy, etc. So in terms of FAM picking up that mantle, how do you see FAM's sort of strategy for the future in getting a kind of an inclusive approach to getting the best of sector expertise into technical guidance that we can all use?
Yeah, again, I think the key thing is collaboration. Last thing we want to do is for individuals or individual organisations to be going off, everyone coming going off separately, writing their own stuff. And there is work being done on there, done on that. But I think there is more work to be done on that side of it in collaboration. Because another, it sort of ties into this, Kevin. One of the other things I wanted to, get across really as well is just to be absolutely clear as well that FAM membership is not exclusive to BOHS qualifications, and that's something that maybe isn't generally understood. It's not about that. It's about anyone who, whatever qualifications they may have, and the BOHS are not the only qualifications in the marketplace. The FAM hopefully is the home for these professionals to come together to communicate, to make things better. And I think that needs to be, part of our strategy, going forward as well. Another key thing as well that I think we need to, when we're thinking about stakeholders, I think part of the issues of sort of, the quality of the work that's done out in the wide world, there is a lot of it's down to the actual people buying the work, and I don't think the people buying the work have a good enough understanding of what they're asking for, and it still sort of surprises me, but maybe it shouldn't. And I think that's something that we need to work on, because when we're talking about strategy, if anyone's done an MBA, apparently it stands for Master of Bugger All. But one of the things that you come up with is various strategy models, and the one that everyone knows about really is this Porter's 5 force model. And a key part of that is the bargaining power of the suppliers, of the buyers. And the buyers in the asbestos world tend to be much more powerful than the suppliers. So there's a massive skew of where the power lies, and therefore that affects the pricing of what's done, and therefore the quality. And this for me is fundamental to where we are and the problems we have. But I've never ever heard anyone discussing it, because everyone's talking about technical detail, which is all wonderful, but we seem to ignore the marketplace. And I think that's something I haven't quite worked out how yet, but I think FAM needs to really think of that when we're thinking about our strategy.
And I know that there has been some discussion in FAM of getting people who have to manage asbestos within organisations more involved with
Absolutely.
FAM. Do you think that's part of the solution?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's all of these facilities managers, the kind of the duty holders. And actually, really, it's always been for me is the senior management within organisations. I remember, literally, it was 15 years ago, delivering a training course to the head of housing of a housing association. Certainly won't mention which one it was, and they said, "Well, see what this has got, much has got to do with me. I've got millions of pounds worth of budget that I have to think about what the heck's asbestos." Politely explained about people dying, and it was this is pretty important actually. And so I think there is again a lot of work to be done in that respect.
And I'm just picking up on a point that you made earlier, obviously BOHS for a long period of time has been an award provider, but as a training provider yourself, you do BOHS qualifications, you do other qualifications, don't you? And FAM's not responsible for BOHS qualifications, is it? It's not.
No.
And there's a bit of a variety, isn't there? There's a mixed market in terms of the sort of training and education. And do you see that there's a sort of value to having that kind of mixed market?
I'm always a fan of competition. Unless it's competition with business. But apart from that, no. In all seriousness, I think competition's vital, isn't it? Because without it, things stagnate. People get too comfortable. Healthy competition. Sometimes competition can get dysfunctional, and that's not helpful to anyone. But good competition, it makes everyone sort of up their game. I'm all for that.
But it is this sort of this very complex situation where you have multiple awards providers, and that's good because that creates diversity and choice, etc. You've got very powerful purchasers in terms of of services, including training services. And so is the vision really to kind of enable that sort of professional space where, if you like, the economics are taken out of the mix?
Yes, and that bit can get put to one side. The qualifications you may have can be put to one side. This is all about knowledge sharing, doing the right thing, hopefully helping steering the whole industry profession in the right direction. Absolutely. And I'm saying is we in a profession, but we're not, maybe don't even see ourselves as a profession, and that bothers me a lot.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've obviously been really involved in FAM, and hopefully you can be involved in FAM in sort of coming years. As a member, you're also a member of the VOHS board, so sort of, but in terms of focusing on FAM, from your point of view, we know that FAM's been looking at new strategic aims about how to really kind of move asbestos forward, and how FAM can help the sector move forward. Now, what your personal vision? Do you have a sort of vision about?
Yeah, very, very much. I keep banging on about it actually, because really, I see one of the key things that for us to strive for is chartered status for our members. Now, there's a whole raft of reasons for that. We could any of them, and not being people understand chartership, don't they? You're a chartered accountant, they might not know what they do. A chartered surveyor, they kind of get that, and it sort of brings us up to that kind of professional level. A particular issue that I have was, again, within the industry, and we mentioned it gets a sort of bad reputation, and there are some kind of rogue analysts and surveyors and actually organizations within the industry as well. And I find this strange situation when you're dealing with a carcinogen. There could be a rogue analyst who goes and passes a job that they shouldn't pass, for example, and the company they work for may discipline them or whatever, but they typically, that thing will happen and then they get sacked and they just move to another organization, because you never lose your qualifications. Now, in other professional areas, if you are acting at a point where it's really, really contradictory to the the ethics, etc., of the profession, you would get struck off from that profession. A chartered surveyor is not about to go and deliberately go and make some valuation up or whatever it is they were doing, because they know individually that if they were to do that, they could lose their profession. Now, that doesn't occur yet in the asbestos world. Professionals who are out there doing this very responsible job of surveying, analysing samples, and doing air testing, and in fact managing asbestos and all of those and managing organisations. And I think it's that personal responsibility that perhaps isn't there, because we have this situation where the people who are doing air testing have to be working for a UKRAS accredited organisation, so they kind of, in a way, hide behind the organisation, in some ways hide behind the accreditation, but that shouldn't be the case, and I think that it's that personal responsibility that'll help drive the professionalism forward.
And I know you've also talked in the past about the flip side of that, which is that the really good, and there are some very, very impressive asbestos professionals are doing such a complex task. It's not just that it's an important task. I mean, obviously, emptying the bins is an important task, but maybe not as technically advanced. But we're talking about some really quite complex, long-term, sophisticated planning that's requiring quite a lot, and really recognizing that end is so important, isn't it, for the buyers to understand that actually you pays your money, but this is life and death stuff.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we try and say that at my work, you can get sort of stuck in the technical stuff sometimes, and sometimes we do do in-house training courses where like step back and go, why are we doing this? Because the reason why we're doing this is just try and stop someone from dying, and that's really pretty important, but you can quite forget that when you're getting stuck into the technical stuff, and certainly the buyers need to be more aware perhaps than what they are currently, and I think again that sort of education, it is being done, but it's just part of the the farm strategy, and we want those people to be farm members.
Yeah, and I think it is that what seems to come through to me is the passion of all the people engaged with farm about really kind of celebrating the value of asbestos analysis and management, and actually the importance of that, and the really good stuff that's being done. And I was looking at the RICS stuff, which is always, it's very good. It's incredibly stuff. Occasionally so professional that I have to sort of scratch my head even as a lawyer. But really professional stuff. And then you look at out of what surveyors do, they touch on asbestos, but when you look at asbestos surveying, the stakes are so much higher, the technicalities are so much higher, yet it's not a chartered profession. And you can see that it's crying out for that level of understanding, isn't it?
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it is. And again, I think there's generally a training issue across the board as well, because I think all the organizations that I speak to are struggling to find people at the quality level that they want, but so there is that issue out there as well, that maybe as much as we would want to be either.
And fans almost, I think we've been inspiration for those Antipodeans to come up with farmhands.
Yes, yeah, well that's great. Yeah, I'm still trying to wangle myself a trip over there, but that hasn't happened yet. So this is the importance of collaboration, I think. So yeah.
So there's, it's still got a kind of a global, international sort of reach, hasn't it?
Yeah. And I think again, in terms of our strategy, that is something that is key. It's written in our new strategy there. The sort of the significance of the international aspect of it all, and the UK historically has been so fantastic, and essentially world leading historically, and we want to maintain those international relationships and build on it, and be hopefully seen as a a center of expertise. And I don't mean that as me as well, because I'm not the most technically advanced person, especially as people who know so much more than me, and I think we don't admit that enough within the profession as well. So there's sometimes I'm in meetings and I think, blimey, that is that person there knows really got to grips with it. And I think the farm committee and membership should be all about facilitating that and encouraging the discussions together.
Jonathan, thanks ever so much for your time and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thanks a lot.